Toxic ambition is when it's always about more. It's never enough. It's exhausting for you because all you can do when you conquer something is immediately think about the next conquest. So you're never satisfied. You should only, especially as you rise, commit to doing only what you're inimitable at and let everybody else do the other small stuff. Workaholism is
Yeah.
also a form of imposter syndrome. It means you don't actually believe in yourself because you freak out if you go away for 2 days that the entire operation will collapse. But if you have really good systems, it's insurance. Nothing's going to go wrong. You'll be fine. But
Interesting.
enlightenment is the disciplined pursuit of becoming nobody. Less
wow.
and less.
Wow. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today, we have a very, very special guest on, someone I met a few weeks ago, and I was blown away by her awesome energy. We have Keren, an executive coach, a author of an awesome book I can't wait to get started called Gilded, which is #1 on Forbes and #1 on Amazon on anxiety category in business management. I thought that was hilarious. And she is an awesome coach and a podcast host herself of a terrific podcast called Coached. She's worked with leaders at Nike, SAP, and countless high performers and crazy entrepreneurs like myself. And Keren, thank you so much for being here. I'm thrilled to meet you again. And last time you energized me, and let's do it again.
It's a pleasure. If you want, we can just stick to our topics of travel and food.
Let's
And
go.
this will be as much fun for everyone else as it is for us.
Absolutely, because that's half the fun, right? Is traveling with family and friends and enjoying it. That's why we work so damn hard.
Exactly. So today I wanted to talk, though, about the other crowd pleaser, which is anxiety in management and in leadership. And hopefully, if we resolve that, people have more time for food and travel.
Let's go. Let's go. Keren, what brought you to this? Like, tell me a little bit about your journey, how you even thought to become a coach in this category and an author in this category. Like, what made you go there?
Well, I'd love to tell you that it was a great idea that I had and a purpose-driven mission that allowed me to grow into the inspirer of people that I am. But unfortunately, most coaches get to our work through trauma. We suffer immensely, we collapse immensely, and when we resurrect, we want to take everybody with us on that journey. We want to save them the suffering. And my story in that sense is no exception. By the time I was in my early 30s, and please hold your gasps. I know you're like, oh my God, aren't you in your early 30s? Thank you. Because I've basically done everything check, 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 check. I've done everything right. And I was standing in the middle of what can only be described as a completely exhausting nightmare. I was dissatisfied with all the elements of my life, not because I'm a selfish jackass who can't appreciate good things, but because I had made choices that were not aligned with my soul. I had made choices that were right for my society. I had made choices that were the right thing according to my parents. And I'd not really checked with myself about whether or not this career was for me and whether or not this guy was for me. I basically just did the quote unquote right maneuver. And so I ended up in my early 30s, the way most people end up in their early 40s. I climbed the ladder, I'm looking around, and I'm thinking, why did I park it on this wall? And that's when I realized my only way out of it was to climb down the ladder and start over, which is the scariest thing anybody can do, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I
And
did.
the higher you've risen, the harder it is to say, I'm willing to give up this ladder and start over.
That's right, because of sunk costs, because of loss aversion. Well, luckily, it was so miserable up there at the top. I was so exhausted. I hated that marriage so much. It was abusive. I was so depressed that I had no choice but to go back down. And I did. And then I went through a very tough period, as most people who have basically burned down the ladder of their life know. But in that period of aimlessness, I found myself. I did the work. I went on the inner journey. And that changed absolutely everything. This is when I discovered how interested I am in the topic of human potential, how interested I am in developing myself and my mindset, how interested I am in developing businesses, and how interested I am in wealth consciousness in general. And that was it. I found my calling. And through that work was born Coach Keren.
You had a quarter life crisis, it sounds like. Right? You just
Well, it
sped
was
it
more
up.
like my mid 30s, but yes,
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
live to be 140, that's definitely a quarter life
The way
crisis.
you're living, who knows? Maybe you will. Karen, your book titled Gilded is such a sharp kind of metaphor. There it is. Can't wait to read it. What is the gilded cage you see in many founders and executives living in?
Well, that's exactly what I tried to describe. We all end up achieving and amassing accolades. We all build businesses, and none of us has ever built a business hoping that it wouldn't trap us, but then it ends up trapping us. How many people have ended up with a business that finally defeats the odds, meaning it's actually made it past year five, it's actually made it past six figures, only to find that we have become slaves to our own business, that we're working all the time, that we're thinking about the business all the time, that we're constantly worried that the other shoe will drop. It's kind of like being in a marriage where you're walking on eggshells. Is that really a marriage? And so it is my hope to help every founder out there to not only build a business that is thriving, but to build a business that allows them to be free. This is the only kind of leadership that works. It's the only kind of humanity that works. Break free from the gilded cage. A gilded cage is gilded because it looks like gold, but it's not real gold. That's why it's called gilded.
That's really interesting. What do you, Karen? What do you say to folks that one they love what they do? Right? There's a great saying they say if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. There's times that I agree with that, right? Because when you're passionate about what you do, you love the team you've built, and it's provided so much value to your life. Working all the time doesn't feel like a trap. It feels great. It feels like you've got a wonderful purpose beyond the family. Obviously, family being number one purpose, but even that, it ties you to miss them and want to be around them. And those weekends are special, and those
Yeah.
small vacations are special. Why do you think it's such a bad thing? Especially you got guys like Elon Musk that people look up to, and you've got the founder of Nvidia who admit they work 100-hour weeks.
Yeah. Well, I don't admire them on any level.
Yeah.
However, I will say that if you're not exhausted, then that's not a problem. If this is truly what you want to do with your life and this is what makes you absolutely happy, in other words, it's coming with no cost, there's nothing to look at. Enjoy your neurosis. In the cases of most people, however, it does come with burnout, with overwhelm, with anxiety, with anxious thought, with catastrophizing. By the way, Elon Musk suffers enormously from depression and anxiety. So it's definitely coming with a huge cost. And as a result of that, you are truly dissatisfied. You are not able to relax. You are in relentless pursuit. Then I would recommend that you face the truth. That will bring you to the hardest step in all the inner journey of it is. And that
Yeah.
is admit that things do not feel as good as they look on Instagram. My book is a Trojan horse. I already told you this. My book is a 12-step program that I wanted to call Workaholics Anonymous because
That's
it's
really good.
modeled after Alcoholics Anonymous. And the first step in my program is exactly the step as the program for any addict, which is
Sure.
admit that you don't have it under control. Any addict you speak to, and I speak to addicts on the regular because that's part of what I do, is they'll always tell you, I got this. I can control it. I can stop anytime. And I always say, okay, then stop. And they
It's
can't.
tough. Easier said than done, right? How
Exactly.
does
And if you
uncheck?
can't, and
Yeah.
if it's neurosis, then admit that you don't have this under control and it's not as yummy as you're saying it is. And that will be where the light can come in. You'll basically be cracking open just a tiny bit so that we can get to you.
You've mentioned the word neurosis a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what that means and what does it look like?
Neurosis means that you are dysregulated in some way. It means that there is something that you're doing obsessively that you can't actually control. That's basically it. It's nothing pathological. It's not a death sentence or a sentence of any kind. It just means that there's some pattern that you're perpetuating a little too much. This, by the way, is what all overachievers have in common. What we have in common isn't our accolades or how much we've accomplished or how much we've amassed. It's that we're all just a teeny tiny bit obsessive. We don't know when to stop.
I'm a
Can you
little
relate to
nutty
that?
too, a little crazy. I could definitely relate to that.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Me too. When I go down a rabbit hole, when I decide to reorganize my closet, my husband has to remind me that it's time for bed now. So if you are prone to just a little bit obsessive behavior, you should also know that your default, unfortunately, will be to take it a little too far. And that learning how to relax within yourself and to moderate yourself will be very useful to you, because it will not make you produce less. It'll actually make you produce more.
That's amazing. How does unchecked ambition, I guess, because we're talking about that, and perfectionism quietly erode, I guess, leadership's effectiveness
Yes,
from what you've
well,
seen?
ambition. Word is like napalm to me. Yum, yum, yum. There's two kinds. There's really good ambition and there's toxic ambition.
Okay.
Really good ambition feels fantastic. It's the desire to create, it's the desire to serve with your life, it's the enjoyment of seeing the product of your life enliven and excite other people. For example, I'm delighted that the book is doing so well. Coaching, world class coaching, is very expensive. Not everybody can actually afford this. So for me to hear from the woman in Kansas City and the gentleman in Ghana that this book has blessed their lives is beyond breathtaking to me. It will make me want, like the Energizer Bunny, to keep going and going and going. And that is a good thing because it's not consuming to my life. It doesn't really make me restless. It doesn't make me anxious. If I stopped today, I would be absolutely fine. That's good ambition. Toxic ambition is when it's always about more. It's never enough. It's exhausting for you because all you can do when you conquer something is immediately think about the next conquest. So you're never satisfied. That ambition then starts turning in on itself. It usually turns either to unethical behavior or to shortcuts, command and control of others, and or the lack of maintenance of the self. That's when you know that it's gone awry. So hopefully, if ambition is starting to exhaust you and people around you are beginning to, God willing, if they can, tell you that you're being kind of a jackass, hopefully you're willing to listen, because that means your ambition has gone a bit sour.
That's huge. In your experience for, coaching folks that are business people or tech people, when does the overachievement trap start to show its cracks?
Well, I think that for many of us, it will come in two forms. It will reveal itself in two forms. Number one, in small moments that are quiet when we're by ourselves and just depleted, aimless, restless. We're contemplating really weird feelings, almost feelings that feel like nothing. They usually are accompanied by numbing patterns, excessive scrolling, excessive shopping, drinking. All the isms start to fill that void. Now, most of us cannot pay attention to these because they're so subtle, and because many of us tell ourselves it's nothing, I don't need to pay attention to this. But it is my hope that if you've been feeling restless, aimless, kind of numb for a while, it's kind of like if your relationship with your partner, your husband or wife, is sexless. After a while, you're gonna notice it because it sucks. Number two, the second form is trauma. You'll really hit a wall. This wall can be horrific, like disease, God forbid, but it can also just be a wall, a big financial collapse, an accident, a huge problem. The form of a problem will almost always make you contend or deal with what is. That's usually when we'll start to see the cracks of overachievement. Now, sometimes with case two, scenario two, people will patch it up, get away with it, move to the next one. So it takes like a series of traumas in their case. But I like to say to my clients who are in that situation, you can run, but you can't hide. It's
Love it.
going to get you.
Karen, there was a gentleman I had, Scott Anderson, on my show a year ago, and he talked about Burnout too. A really good book, really good idea. And one of the things he talked about is, people take these 5 month vacations, or they take a month vacation. This is their way of kind of a rebirth, but it rarely works because they
No.
go back to their crazy habits. So they go harder before, then they take this 1 week vacation or 1 month or whatever it is, and then they come back. He recommended almost like daily vacations, and that just
Yeah.
means 5 minutes on a meditation app, or 10 minutes on a massage chair, or weekly walk with whatever. It was more micro vacations, things you can do
Yes,
daily. What's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I think that the first mode was how most people are operating. Most people, it's like, the day before you go on a diet, you're like, listen, I'll just eat everything in the house. Give me the whole tray of spanakopita.
Sounds
And
delicious.
tomorrow, I pay for it. Obviously, you're gaining the weight back. I mean,
Yeah.
we could save you the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't eat. So it's much wiser instead to have discipline and systems, and these systems should actually support your well-being in addition to your productivity. Many of us have a lot of systems that support our productivity but not our well-being. The reason I can work as much as I do, I travel every single week. I'm a professional speaker, and I'm already starting to work on the next book, is because my systems are bomb. And I like to say systems are like insurance. Like nothing guarantees your success more than having really good systems.
Agreed.
As the great James Clear has said, you do not rise to the level of your goals. He's the author of Atomic Habits.
Yep.
You fall to the level of your systems. And so, this actually, Scott Anderson is a brilliant, brilliant man, because this is something I discovered too. I work into my day a couple of systems that keep me chill. For example, I take a walk every day. I literally just posted that before this session. I take a nice walk in the sun doing nothing. Another one of my systems is what I call waking up in the 90s. For the first 2 hours of my day, because I'm old enough to remember very well the 90s, I don't do anything. I don't check the New York Times app. I don't, God forbid, check my email. I just chill. I sit
Wow.
around the house eating cereal like it's 1994 and Madonna's still on the radio.
It's amazing.
Everything is awesome. And that really helps me to sort of still stay in a phase of chillaxation. And it allows me to then do my work from a state of ease, which, by the way, makes me a lot nicer to be around.
That's nice.
Everyone should adopt this.
We want a nice Karen because it's scary otherwise, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty chill otherwise too
I'm
because
just
I'm so
kidding.
enlightened. But no, it's definitely much more pleasing. It's also better for me. I don't exhaust so easy. I don't need the vacation so much, so I can enjoy them anyway. You know how it takes like a lot of people. You were just in Hawaii. Like
Yep.
it takes a lot of people like 2 days to unwind before they actually feel like they're on vacation.
That's funny. I
I'm on
usually
vacation the minute I arrive in the hotel.
Me too. Me too. I'm
Yeah.
I'm on vacation before. I mean, once I feel like we've made it to the airport, this last trip, we were, I think, the last people on the plane. That's how rushed we were, and we barely made it there. That is not vacation. Once we got on the plane, I was in vacation mode, which was awesome. And I did unwind, by the way. I checked very few emails. I did not take my laptop. So there was wonderful time with the family. This was just us getting away. And you know what? To your point, well, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast. My team did terrific.
Yes,
No fires. Everything was taken care of by my wonderful team and my leadership team, and everything worked out great. And I think it was a great experience for them because I didn't check in on them. I didn't doubt they can handle things.
yeah,
And
that's right.
frankly, not only did things not break, I honestly thought things went really well. There were systems
Exactly. It's
created.
because of systems. I was just going to say that also means you have really good systems in the business. To have really good systems in the business means you can take 2 weeks off and nothing's going to happen. That's a really good stress test for everybody's business. I always say that workaholism is
Yeah.
also a form of imposter syndrome. It means you don't actually believe in yourself because you freak out if you go away for 2 days that the entire operation will collapse. But if you have really good systems, it's insurance. Nothing's going to go wrong. You'll be fine.
Not Karen, not only did we have systems in place, but systems were created where there were gaps.
Yeah.
So my director, senior director, found a gap in a situation with a client. She just went and grabbed our operations person and created an actual 8 system. And they showed me today, and I was like, "This is way better than what I had." So done, great.
And that
Change
also
that
means
one
you had a really
word.
good hiring system that founder.
See, there it is.
That's a system. They're all
Yeah.
systems. There are no coincidences. Jerry Seinfeld is my greatest hero. Now, this is a person you should admire. 50 years at the top of his game. 50 years. In
Wow.
1 year alone, he made $300 million. Show me another entertainer other than Taylor Swift who's ever made that kind of profit. He created Seinfeld, comedians in cars getting coffee. He has sold out tour after tour for decades.
Yeah.
And P.S., happy marriage, 30 years. Thank you
Wow.
very much, which I believe is the biggest accomplishment of anyone's life, right?
Absolutely huge.
And how did he do it? He says that he realized very early on in his career that everybody's talented. You and I know this. All founders are talented, but
Yep.
how, I mean, it's so cliche, right? The talent will be dead in the water if you don't actually apply to it some systems and some consistency. Jerry Seinfeld's big secret, as he has revealed in interview after interview, is that he decided to write new content every day. That's
Wow.
it. His dedication is for 2 hours a day, not anything exhausting. He just works for 2 hours a day on his craft. Is it any wonder he has become better and that he's still chillaxed, happy, and a very, very talented performer? I don't think so.
That's huge. It's huge. Yeah, it allows you to breathe when you have the right people in the right seats and the right systems where you can take a breather. One thing that I have tried unsuccessfully, Karen, is when I wake up, I know I shouldn't check my phone,
I know.
but it's like it's the way that I relax is when I get caught up on emails. I know it's terrible, and I set my day up so that I'm not needed for the next 2 hours while I'm dropping off my kids, while I go to
Great.
the gym, things like that. So it is a system, but I would like some more clarity time in my head. There's none. That's the one
But you
thing that
just
I'm
created
working.
it. You said that there's 2 hours where you work out and drop off your kids. These are probably your relaxation moments.
Yes.
In other words, you're just preparing to be relaxed. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that for most people, it's not like that. That addiction to the phone consumes the rest of the day, paralyzes the morning, screws up the priorities, messes up the to do list, and eats the productivity. They never get to the gym. That's when it's a problem. For the rest of us,
It's like a
go get them.
leash. It feels like a leash, right? The damn phone is a leash because people
Yeah.
they expect to
These
reach
people know
you.
how to get us. They like
Oh
they're
yeah.
geniuses. They understand how to get you. They understand how to pull you into a rabbit hole. For me, the app serves so many cat videos that I cannot resist. And so I have learned that the only way to do this is to put the phone away. That's what works for me. You do what works for you.
Well, I did it. I did it several times on vacation. It was amazing. Again,
It's heaven.
nothing blew up. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast. It explores hidden sides of success, imposter syndrome. We talked about financial fear, pressure to maintain an image. You and I think, talked about this
Yeah.
like immigrant paranoia when you're
Hmm.
running, assuming you're gonna lose it all and you'd have to start over, and I can't start over, and it's all gonna go away when it's 95% of the time it's not gonna happen. Which of these kind of hits tech founders the hardest? It doesn't have to be tech founders, any
Mm.
founder, any entrepreneur, any successful person, the hardest in your view, and why?
There are two. Thank you so much for bringing it up. I created Coached because I'm a huge fan of the very old sitcom Frasier, and I wanted to have a show in which I answered callers and pretended I was Frasier. And I'm really glad because that allows me to essentially present Coached as a Trojan horse. Most people know me as a very funny, very entertaining figure. The Coached program is entertaining, of course, but it's really not funny. It's very heavy. So I always say, approach at your own risk. The two big things that I think are resonating right now with founders the most, number one is imposter syndrome. In other words, they're worried that they're a fraud. They're worried that their capabilities are not as awesome as they say they are, and therefore it will be taken away. These are real feelings of unworthiness with which we all contend. The second one, can I say a bad word?
You can go as many bad words as you want.
Okay, good. There's this one episode that like literally went viral and it's called I May Be an Asshole, but Everyone Else is an Idiot. And that's a very big founder problem. A very big founder problem is not recognizing just how invulnerable you are, how
Yeah.
harsh you are, and how people really see you. If I can invite you to just sit with those podcasts while being very angry with me for saying things you don't want to hear, you might actually have a breakthrough. And they're very important. They're important for your leadership, they're important for your sense of ease, and they're important for your rise. The world needs founders to succeed. We need people with big hearts who have really big ideas to do very well. And I always say the more successful the people are, the more their wake, the wake that they leave behind them is big, which is why I believe it's my responsibility to help them feel good.
That's huge. What do you mean by imposter syndrome for these folks? A lot of these folks have built businesses 20, 30, 40, $50 million in revenue.
Yeah.
Like at this point, why would there be any imposter syndrome left?
Because most of us are not the exception to the universe and unfortunately are still grappling with the inner feeling that we are powerless or that we are worth less. And that is because we are subject to a human body, and this human body is finite. You will die. We're all aware of our mortality. And once we're aware of our mortality, we're also trying to claim some sense of power or immortality, which makes us hustle. Hustle is code for imposter. So let's talk a little bit about this. Imposter syndrome, just so you know, just according to the research, affects 70% of the population. I've now
Wow.
coached more than 2,000 founders privately, and I have yet to meet one single exception to the universe. So I would love to meet Gandhi. I'm really looking forward to it at some point. But actually, usually the ones who are the most confident looking, they're the ones with the very severe
Of course.
cases of imposter syndrome. So, imposter syndrome is the feeling that against and in stark contrast to all the evidence, you still feel that your accomplishments are not up to snuff and that you are, in fact, not as awesome as you say you are or as you look. This usually comes up in moments of you get hired and you automatically have this worry that you're not going to be able to fulfill the contract, or you're not particularly comfortable with who you fully are. So you start humble bragging, name dropping, people pleasing, etc. So the behaviors that try to essentially close the gap and appease people and get them to like you are indicative of imposter syndrome. This is usually very problematic because it costs us. It means we will stay mediocre. We will not actually rise to the height of our success. Now, I want to talk to you about the 4 ways that it appears in superstars who have launched several companies and actually should be beyond this. Number one, know it allism. The ones who say that they know everything and they're actually really, really awesome and there's absolutely nothing wrong with their knowledge are people who are trying to keep it together all the time. The reason they're trying to keep it all together all the time is because they're afraid that if they ever lose it, they will be discovered. Number two, perfectionists. Perfectionists are people for whom good enough is never good enough. Only perfect is good enough. Unfortunately, this is also an imposter stance, not only because it is cruel to the self and harsh towards other, but it's also unattainable. There's no such thing as perfection. Only cats are perfect. The end. Number three is classical neurotic imposture. Those are people who start sentences with, and that's going to be real annoying to you, Avedis,
Yeah.
with the sentence, here's the problem with that. Here's why this is not going to work. There are people who are like that. They play very cynical odds. They usually don't stop stopping. They're in analysis paralysis a lot. Analysis paralysis only comes from neurotic imposture. And last but not least is my favorite, workaholics. I already indicated this, but let me make it super clear why I believe workaholics suffer from severe imposter syndrome. They're not really willing to stress test their businesses. Many years ago, I was married to a very bad person. It was an abusive marriage. But that aside, he was also a wealth manager. And every 6 months, he had to take 2 weeks off called garden leave and relinquish all of his devices. I asked why this was something that they do. And he said at the bank, if you're committing fraud, you have to be on the devices all the time. And that's where it clicked for me. I realized that workaholics are afraid to take a vacation because they believe deep down that if they ever let go of this, it's so ephemeral, it's such a fluke, it's such a gift of luck that they will blow it up.
Wow.
So we have to all start to understand that we've got a little bit of imposter syndrome going on. And what needs to happen is really working on our self worth, on our sense of deserving, on our sense of loving ourselves. And that will happen through the cultivation of great mind habits and great body habits.
Wow, that's very powerful. Karen, I'm going to challenge you a little bit on something. So,
Cool.
most of these companies, some of the most successful companies in the world, have been founded and built and scaled and provided millions of jobs, billions of dollars to the economy by these maniacs we talk about. And I say that very nicely because I'm sure there's a piece of me that falls in this category. Why change that, right? So if we change that, a lot of opportunities are lost. And I feel like some of these things, as bad as they sound, are the reasons that
Yeah.
people are so driven, right? Almost to a fault.
Mhm.
Actually, not almost, to a fault many times. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that it actually doesn't work in relative comparison to the less maniacs or the less maniacal leaders. We have armies, I mean, so many swaths of research by this point. I turn to the work of Adam Grant, the work of Brene Brown, institutional sociologists who have shown that, with due respect to anyone Walter Isaacson has ever biographied, from Elon Musk to Steve Jobs, much more effective modes of leadership create much longer and much more sustained results. Let's just talk about the microcosm of the people that I've worked with, or the companies I've worked with, Estee Lauder, Nike. Both of them dropped 20 to 40 points last year. Man, there is a huge price to be paid for command and control, not to mention the massive revolving door that it causes if the command and control hierarchy or model of leadership is sustained again and again at lower levels. So, what do? Listen, we don't change them overnight. These cultures are a certain way for a certain period of time, but we do slowly but surely maneuver the entire organization towards a style of leadership that is more trusting and that is more, um, tr- I don't know about complete transparency, but allows for more questioning and for more open dialogue. In that sense, we are hoping to create a hybrid. And what I like to say is that there is a happy medium here. It's called be nice, but not too nice. Here's what that means. There's a great thing. I mean, I love being nice. I'm such a lovely person. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, 100%.
But I'm not too nice. In other words, I never make mood more important than the mission. I don't need you
Wow.
to like me at the expense of my business. I don't need you to like me at the expense of control. And for this, I have another great role model for you. Maybe even better than Jerry Seinfeld, the one and only Phil Jackson. Phil
Love
Jackson
Phil
in
Jackson.
Chicago. I mean, who doesn't love Phil Jackson? I would marry him if he wasn't so old. Phil Jackson, the superstar coach of the Chicago Bulls, who I discovered in 2020 when I ran out of stuff to watch and ended up clicking on The Last Dance, which P.S. changed my life.
Amazing.
And then goes on to coach the LA Lakers and wins 11 rings. I mean, this is unbelievable, his success, right?
Yes.
Now, he's a nice guy. He's a big guy from North Dakota, very affable, very sweet, kind of a Buddhist disposition, right? When you watch The Last Dance, you're like, is this guy for real? Like, he is so
Yeah.
chill. Until Dennis Rodman goes on a 3-day bender with Carmen Electra. Until Scottie Pippen fakes a migraine and lets down the whole team. That's when you see him go, that's the line.
You
You've
have
let
to
down
have a
the
line
team,
as
you shape up, and you align with the mission. And I will sacrifice a great player if you are not aligned with the mission. Be nice, but not too nice. This is where I like to say there really is a hybrid between that deterministic, maniacal work and also pleasantry. Yes, you can be both. You do not have to be insane and mean to lead effectively. You also don't need to be a wishy washy pushover. There is a medium, guys.
100%. And the medium is where the real leadership comes in, because you people like, are you sure I could say this? Absolutely, absolutely, you could say it. In fact, my wife and I, we laughed because one time I smoked some barbecue and it wasn't my best work, and I said, well, the team really enjoyed it. She's like, no, they're just being nice because you're the boss. And I said, no, my team's not like that. They wouldn't go for seconds and thirds if they didn't like it, right? But nice try. But there's that little bit of that, like, no, we don't need anyone to kiss ass around here. In fact, it's kind of
Yeah,
gross. I've always told people I want to be liked, but I don't need to be liked, right? We all want to be liked and loved. And another thing I've said
of
is
course.
I don't want to be needed, right? A business should not need its founder every freaking day, where you feel guilty for leaving on vacation, or you feel guilty
Yes,
for to be out of the office one day. And I think that's where the passive aggressiveness can come in, because they need you and you
yes.
become like you work for them versus the other way around, versus a team mentality. But yeah, I'm a huge Phil Jackson fan, and he was able to take the most talented people and keep them focused, keep them beyond their giant egos, right?
Exactly. I mean, and he wasn't maniacal at all. He's an incredible role model. And his book, 11 Rings, is a wonderful book about leadership.
Yeah, that's awesome. Why do so many leaders feel kind of emotionally isolated even when they've made it? Because you hear things like it's lonely at the top
It
and this
is.
and that, and yeah, now tell me
They're
about
not
that.
wrong. You are lonely at the top because getting to the top is extraordinarily hard. Very few people will make it here. But you're also lonely at the top. So, in other words, the first part of the answer is you are correct. You are lonely at the top because it is lonely at the top. The second thing is, however, is if you stay lonely at the top, it's on you. And that's because you have not cultivated a new relationship to new people at the top. It is very, very easy to make friends. We just forget how to do it when we get older. And one of the things that you can actively do is learn how to network, by the way, which will also blow up your business. My big secret in not being lonely at the top is that I constantly are making new friends at my level in my
Yes.
discipline. This has also been enormous saving grace for my business because I'm not alone. I can ask other people who are going through the same thing what's going on and what to do. And I can also help use these relationships as strategic collaborations for the expansion of my ecosystem. And therefore, I'm not lonely.
Huge. If you're, I mean, for me, peer groups, CEO think tanks, those are huge.
I
Like
mean, I
if
don't understand how anyone can live without them. I started the club, which is my advanced cohort mastermind, to
yeah,
say, forget about coaching for a second. Like, real community is what you absolutely need to
huge.
succeed. That's the most important thing. And I myself, I really walk the walk. I join masterminds every year. I stay in the same masterminds that work for me every year. I'm constantly cultivating. You'll see, this is not the last you'll hear of me. I'll be like, hey, you want to come to Austin? In other
Yeah.
words, we will cultivate these relationships and we will absolutely, therefore, stay in connection. It doesn't have to be lonely at the top. It's totally normal to end up here after a very hard climb because solopreneurship is rigorous and hard. But if you stay there, that's on you.
It's huge. Yeah, I've been in Vistage for many, many years. I left.
Yeah.
I flirted with joining YPO. That was good. Tiger 21, and now I'm in my own group. Just great people,
Yeah.
and you really, you kind of can relax a little bit. One, you can trust them if you're in the right group, and you can
That's
share
right.
things you wouldn't even share with your friends or your family. Two, I feel like you could. You're constantly around people that are doing better than you, which is really exciting because it also humbles you. You
Yeah.
think
And
you have your
inspiring.
shit
Yeah.
figured out. It's inspiring. You got a guy that's sitting next to you that built $1 billion publicly traded company. You're like, wow, wow, it really does
Yeah.
humble you. Can you tell us a story with no
Especially if
names
he's
of?
nice and he's married.
Ah, look at that. Can you share a story of a founder or exec who seemed to have it all, but was kind of secretly unraveling on the inside?
How much time have you got? Oh,
Oof.
that's the classic story. The classic story is the superstar trial lawyer who actually had a massive health episode because they were working themselves to the bone. And when you meet them, they're just saying, listen, I just need to clear this up a little bit so I can think a little better and grow the business. And I'm like, if you keep working like this, you will die. And then I feel terrible because they're in the hospital and it turns out they actually might die. This is a very classic case. Another one is the $1 billion superstar who has built a business from scratch, whom I do admire enormously, except he hasn't had sex in his marriage for 7 years. What do
Wow.
you think's going to happen there? That's waiting for a collapse. There are, of course, superstars at the very, very top of their fields who start experiencing, I mean, nothing will hurt your soul more than there's children suffering.
Mm.
So I get the call when somebody's kid has just tried to kill themselves, or
Oh
God
my
forbid,
God.
unfortunately, in some cases, do take their own lives.
Oof.
This is a horrific thing to go through. And so, what I'm trying to say is life is really brutal. And those of us who think that we can game it are lying. We are kidding ourselves. It is so important to learn how to deal with uncertainty. It is so important to learn how to deal with your mind. There is literally nothing else. So yeah, I have countless stories like that. I love telling those stories. I enjoy telling them in Gilded because in 99% of cases they turn out well. They have a happy and wonderful ending for those who are willing to go the distance.
It's amazing. What are I think we talked about this a little bit, but when do you know when someone's headed towards a burnout? You're having lunch with them, and you're just kind of smiling because I could see in your face you're listening to someone. You're like, you're gonna burn out, bud. Like when? What are some of the first signs you notice?
They usually start saying things like, "Well, there's nothing I can do about this,"
Hmm.
and I'm usually thinking, "What are you talking about? You could literally stop this right now."
Yeah, you
Their
can do.
sense of self-importance starts to overtake them. And
Interesting.
like I say, you can run, but you can't hide. You are still human in human form, which means it's going to get you.
What do you recommend to someone that, let's say, has multiple businesses, right? And it's the reality of their world, without giving that up, which is important to them. How do they make sure that they're not spread too thin? Because I think you and I talked. I love my business and I do well, but then I have things
Yes.
outside that kind of pull me and
Yes.
push me, and I get frustrated over silly things. And um,
Okay, so you just
yeah,
answered your own question.
yeah,
Your job, especially as things begin to multiply, is to become far more focused on only what matters and far less focused on silly things that do not matter. This means you must know the difference between your zone of excellence and your zone of genius. You must allow people to only operate in their zone of excellence. This is a concept from Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap. Yes, I love to read, and yes, you should too. This wonderful book explained to me that the zone of excellence is that which we do quite well and we're well paid for. In other words, we'll keep doing it because we keep getting money for it. This unfortunately does not mean that it's what your zone of genius is. Your zone of genius is what's easy for you and what you're inimitable at. You should only, especially as you rise, commit to doing only what you're inimitable at and let everybody else do the other small stuff. For example, I'm pretty good at managing my books. I'm quite good at my own marketing, but I'm not inimitable in those departments. So for me to worry about that nonsense, when my zone of genius is to show up, coach, and
Yep.
speak, is idiotic.
Yep.
As my business continues to proliferate, for me to actually remove myself from these capacities is to leave money on the table and exhaust myself. We cannot do that. We must remember that, like any good cheese, we are at our most delicious when we are not spread thin. So you
Love it.
got to say no to the nonsense that doesn't matter. And you have to have the courage to sit down and sort through it and say, this is a yes, this is a no. By the way, there was a book that changed my life in this respect, and it's called 10X is Easier Than 2X by
Love
Ben,
it.
right? Ben
Love it.
Hardy and Dan Sullivan.
Yes.
And I remember understanding just viscerally that if I remove 80% of the garbage that I do on a daily basis and I just super focus on the 20% that makes real money,
Yeah.
I mean, look at what's happening to me right now. My business has exploded in the last year.
Amazing. Congratulations. I love that book. I read
Yeah,
that in one
I love
sitting.
that book
Like I
too.
had to
Everybody
stop
should read it.
myself from yeah, it's such a simple book, right? And it just get rid of the 80% of the crap that you do daily and just focus on 20. What?
And you're
Fire
like,
the
I
code.
can't get rid of, but then you start to realize, oh my God, I have to get rid of the 80%. You do.
Besides, I think there's also a misunderstanding, right? Like, it's not about like you just throw everything away. It's you could, delegate and elevate, right? Like, what you're not great at, others are better at, and they create so many
Yes.
opportunities for others. Like you said, like I just show up to this podcast, right? But everything else is done for me, from the studio to the people that built the mics for me. They came in and set this up, to the editing, to the my EA who schedules it. Like I don't do much except show up and
Yeah.
just talk to brilliant people like you, and that's where the fun is. I don't want to do the other crap, right? I
I
don't have
told you it's
time.
also imposter syndrome. Like this idea that if you don't do it, it won't get done well is insane.
Yeah.
It's truly insane.
Sometimes when you don't do it, it's done better,
Oh my
frankly, because
God, every time I don't do things, it's done better.
no, that's huge. How do you begin to help someone actually like reset?
So the first thing that I do is I help them get to a place where they're comfortable enough and have enough rapport and trust in me to admit that not everything is okay.
Yeah,
This means that you understand I'm on your side. I'm not, you don't have to keep it together for me. You can actually let go. And from there, we can start to really show you how much trash is in your mind, how much is working against you, from a loving place that wants to get rid of the trash so that we can introduce a new way of thinking that will serve you far better. That's
that's
pretty much
huge.
it. That's the
That's
entire job of coaching. Phil Jackson shows up and shows Michael Jordan that his former coach, Coach Doug, very nice, well meaning guy, complete maniac. Everything he taught him was wrong. And now we learn the triangle. That's it.
huge.
The
Wow.
rest, as they say, is history.
It is literally history, right? You emphasize 90% of change is emotional, not tactical.
Yes.
What emotional assumptions do leaders need to confront to grow?
Well, everything is mindset. This is so true. You and I can teach everybody the tactics, right? Like, this is the move I made. This is the move I made. This is the move I made. But the most important thing that people need to understand is how to stop playing not to lose and how to start playing to win. Let me explain this. I need to invoke one more pop culture reference. It'll be very fast. The greatest movie of the last 10 years was Crazy Rich Asians. I think you can agree.
Never watched it.
It's amazing. It opens with game theory, it closes with game theory. It's not a romantic
Wow,
comedy. It's a brilliant,
really?
brilliant movie about how to think. And it opens with a scene where the protagonist, Rachel, is playing poker against her TA. Her TA has a really good hand, she has a garbage hand. She sees, however, that he's flinching, he's worried, and then she goes, okay, moves all her chips to the middle of the table. What does he do with a good hand?
Throw it away.
He folds.
Of course.
Of course.
Throws away his
And
cards.
then she goes, boom, I won. And then she shows people how she won. She won with a garbage hand because she knew he would not be thinking with his logic, he would be thinking with his psychology. This is making my point perfectly. It shows me that almost all the founders that I'm working with are covering their ass, hedging their bets, always afraid of the downside, making really garbage moves because they're so afraid to lose instead of making the right moves because they know they can win. It's a completely different way of thinking. And when we start to show you how this plays out in lots of ways in which you're strategizing for your business, you make completely different decisions. And that's the difference between a coach who is in seven figures and a coach who's in, I don't know, five figures. Do you know what I
Yikes.
mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. If you could rewrite leadership book for, founders or entrepreneurs, what must be in chapter one?
Admit that you don't know everything. Admit that you don't know what you don't know. If I could read all leaders from one thing, it's the first thing you have to start reading these books with is a blank page, an admission that you don't know everything. That's the only way we're going to throw you for a real loop, which will allow us to change your mindset.
I'm actually surprised that you're running into that, Karen. All the things you said, I agree with 100%. But it's like everybody I've been surrounded by, the reason they hired people is because they didn't know everything, right? The reason they started growing is because they knew, oh, I have a gap here. I got to bring in a marketing person knows more than me. I
Sure,
got to
but
bring
that's
in a,
easier to see than the gap in your mind. Most people can see a gap in their marketing. They can see those. They look for
of
external
course.
filling. The inner gaps are much harder to spot. That's what I'm talking about.
Ah, tell me more about that. Unpack that a little
Well, I
bit for
can
me.
see that I have a marketing issue in my business, and I can see that I'm missing a sofa in my living room. These are external things. It's
Hmm.
very hard for me to see a blind spot. That's why it's called a blind spot. That there's an
Interesting.
area in which I'm terrified and I'm absolutely not playing properly. It's really hard, especially for people who have won a couple of things. They cannot see that they're actually not winning. A person who looks like they're married and making a lot of money does not see that they're actually losers. They can't see it. They're exhausted. They're tired. They're really loath to admit to you that they're cheating. They're really loath to admit to you that they're so numbed that they're on the TikTok all the time. They're really loath to admit that they actually don't like this job and it hasn't lit them up for a very long time. Now, this is not the classical case for everyone. So I always say to people, if the book is not resonating with you, with due respect, I named it Gilded, not your name.
Hmm.
However, if it is resonating with you, you can do something about this and just keep reading and allow yourself to relax into the work until the answers come.
Yeah, it feels the reason I asked that question is because I feel like the more you know you don't know a
Yes,
bunch
that's
of
very
things,
true. That's very
right?
true. But you have to be open to really realizing that you're actually becoming nobody instead of becoming somebody. Most people are acquiring knowledge in order to become more of somebody. This is the nature of life. But
Interesting.
enlightenment is the disciplined pursuit of becoming nobody,
Oh,
less and
wow.
less.
Wow. There's a saying about that, right? If you're all things to all people, you are, what is it? No
You're
one
serving
to,
no one,
yeah, you're
exactly.
serving no one. Exactly. How do executives start building a culture that to prevent burnout and not just react to it, right? Because we do that too.
Well, I can tell you what they don't do. They don't start with nonsense like Taco Tuesdays and yoga sessions in the series. They really just start to cultivate a community and a culture of trust. The most important thing to cultivate in people is trust. And here's what trust means and what leaders get wrong. Trust means not, I trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, because that means I'm now going to control everything that you do.
Yeah.
It means I have your back. To cultivate that is really to just cultivate rapport. I'm going to talk to you about what's going on. I'm going to admit mistakes. I'm going to tolerate mistakes. Not more than two, thank you very much. Remember, be nice, not too nice.
Hmm.
And I'm going to build processes with you. I'm going to show a collaborative spirit. This is how you build culture, not
Huge.
through gestures that are empty like a Taco Tuesday.
By the way, Taco Tuesday, yoga, all that stuff is amazing. We
Yeah,
should
they're great,
not
but
do
they
those.
don't
But
replace rapport.
exactly. So don't do it instead of,
Yes.
right? You could do it in addition to, but you'd have to have a stronger culture it's more real because that's all external stuff, like you said, right? You can give your kids brand new cars and incredible 5-star restaurants and this and that, but if you're not a good father and a good husband, then what is the point?
They know that you're not a good parent.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's worth absolutely nothing. You're
One
right.
of the funny things that I've learned from is you could be talking to the children of some billionaire that gave them the world and they hate their parents,
Yeah,
let's say. And then you talk to somebody, some immigrant farmer's daughter or son, and they're like they look up to their father, as
that's
some
right.
god,
Right.
because he or
Like
she
my
was
parents.
there.
Like
Yeah,
my parents. And I really think success without fulfillment is ultimate failure. What
it's
is it
huge.
worth if your children don't love you? What is it worth if your husband doesn't love you? What is this worth? What is this for? None of
Yeah.
it matters. The only thing that matters is being a truly exceptional version of yourself.
Love that. That's really, really great. How do you kind of separate the feeling of kind of hustle that's kind of toxic, right? The toxic ambition versus being a scrappy kind of company where, yeah, people are working sometimes long and hard, right? And not apologetic about it. It's like, hey, we've got a mission, we got to get there, we got to accomplish a lot. Like, how do you, what's the key difference between those two?
Well, what do you think it is?
Well, it depends, right? If it's out of balance, then there's a problem.
Exactly.
It's for me, it's just about life is about balance, right? If
That's
people are
it.
enjoying
That's really
themselves,
the simplest answer. The
yeah,
simplest answer is okay, you just have to have the courage to stop when it needs to stop and not add things. This is going to sound a little out of place, but here's a saying I like to employ with my clients. If you suspect that you're not very good at sex, don't do it harder. In other words, don't go harder at something that is not working. Your only option is to retreat a little bit and to then observe and then to try to find a different level of balance. That's pretty much it.
amazing, amazing. How should leaders handle that guilt of stepping back? I think I talked about that a little bit, right? It's like whether it's a fear of losing their edge or it's the fear
Yeah.
of whatever it is of like, my team needs me.
You should
You know,
avoid it at all costs and completely reject it from your body. I do not enjoy answering this question as if it were legitimate because I would give it too much air. I believe no one should feel guilt and no
wow,
one should feel shame. They are useless emotions. Instead, you should be motivated by the desire to serve, by the desire to collaborate, by desire to create great things. Guilt and shame never produced anything useful. They make us feel terrible, which makes us very, very painful to ourselves and to other people. That's not useful. You do not teach a small child to behave better by telling them that they're terrible people. You teach them that it's really nice to share and it feels better and you're going to like it. That's pretty much it. So reject the emotion entirely would be my, and
wow.
again, I told you I'm a little unusual, but
We
that's the
like
way about
unusual
this.
around here. We like unusual around
Yeah.
here. Karen, I've learned so much. I'm hoping my audience has as well. Where can people find you? I mean, the book, we've got to pick that up, right? Gilded. The coach, tell us a little bit about how people can tap into your genius.
KerenEldad.com, KerenEldad.com. I'm always up for a conversation. I thank you deeply. This was an honor for me too.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. We learned so much. And as always, guys, if today's episode sparked something for you, and I know it did because it did for me, share it with another leader who could use this reset that Karen talked about. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate you, and thanks for being here.
Thank
Learned a
you.
lot. And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avita Santablian, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.